Okay, people. Session 2. We're trying to cover in the next 45 minutes raising leaders and building teams. Part 1 will be building an effective leadership pipeline. And part 2, if we have time, is my transition from a Pauline type leader to a Barnabas type leader. And the reason, right up front, the reason I love us to get that is most of us suffer from biblical hyper-reality. We read all Pauline stuff, we read the book of Acts, we see Paul in action, and then we aspire to want to be that. And we forget that if there wasn't a Barnabas, that when he was the hot potato of the early church, vouching for him, and vouching for John Mark when Paul wanted to dump him. If there wasn't a Barnabas, we would have lost over half of the New Testament. All of Paul's writings and the fourth gospel, John Mark wrote the fourth gospel, Mark's gospel. If it wasn't for Barnabas, who was a leader maker, whilst Paul was the classic A-type leader. And on my team, I think we've got Paul's and Barnabas's, but I think our culture is determined more by a Barnabas type leader, which I think I am. And I'm so comfortable in that. And I'm very happy to have all these whippersnapper Pauls around me. Okay, moving along. Building an effective leadership pipeline. Quickly, 8 leadership development questions every planter and church leader needs to answer. These are 8 questions. Number 1, key question. Where are our future leaders coming from? You're going to go and plant a church, you want to move forward and you're thinking, where are our leaders coming from? Wow, that's brilliant. Great question. Guys, I remember a lovely story from Peter Howard Brown, who, the guy, my mate who had the stroke in Somerset West, he said this to a young guy emerging in his church. He says, "You'll never be an elder on my team." That guy's now leading New Gen. Steph Kramer. My point being is that be careful how you define who's going to be leaders and who's not going to be leaders, and sometimes we define people too early in their journey because everyone is a work in process. So where are your leaders, future leaders, coming from? And I want to say, here's my premise. The leaders you need for what you need to do will be with you every step of the journey. God will make sure you have what you need. Some He will strategically add as the vision grows and moves. But most, you must continue to remind yourself are in your midst as diamonds in the rough. And if you could be as patient with them as God's been with you, you'll see some rough edges coming off. Every now and then God does humble us by just adding someone from the outside who's the full-blown thing, and it's just wonderful when that happens. Usually not too much of that, and so we've got to avoid perving on other churches. God sent that guy to our church. We've got to be just saying, God, you give us who we need. So where are our future leaders coming from? A, from those He's justified. And who does He justify? According to Romans chapter 4 and verse 5, who does God justify? The ungodly. The ungodly. The other translation says the wicked. Well, let me just put it to you, gentlemen, lady, your future leaders are coming from the wicked, that God will justify. That's what a gospel-centered church does. It doesn't just disciple people into salvation. There is another side of what gospel transformation does. And God gives us these amazing people. I remember becoming a Christian in my first church. And all the guys were really they didn't like me because in the church. They didn't like me because I had my eye on Sue, who was a young youth leader in the church, and Sue started to take an interest in me, and I'd got radically saved, but they did not know I'd been radically saved. So they got all big brotherly and like, who's this guy? Where does he come from? And all of that. And 2 years later, I was their leader. Not because I was better than anyone. God takes the wicked, justifies them, and then He lights fires in wicked people's heart. People, God is at work in people in your church. We need to start to applaud the power and the work of the gospel in people's lives. Stop thinking we need to can come from the wicked people. I've sat with people in this cafe upstairs, unbelievers, and I've said to them, I think you'd be a fantastic follower of Jesus Christ, and then down the road you could be a great leader as well. Cast a vision for a person's life long before they're saved. I said, wow, you really think so? Because most people, if they're truly wicked, are disqualifying themselves, which is a helpful thing. They are disqualified. Number 4. Where do our future leaders come from? Listen to this. From the baggage, like Saul. Unlikely place to find people who are going to be the future king of Israel. And there are people in our churches hiding in obscurity or distracted by their hobbies and their business environments because we haven't given them a compelling vision of where they could possibly go. Where are our future leaders coming from? From the inferior, people with self-deprecating, hyper-self-deprecating, well, not me, like Moses and Gideon. And then they have these divine encounters, one prophetic word, one encounter with God, and they're blasted into a new realm of possibility with their one and only lives, and they come alive in ways that they would not know. Guys, that's what God does. Your leaders are coming from people. Some of them, we need to prophesy into the purposes of God. Waiting. What's going to happen? Where are our future leaders coming from? From the betrayed. The betrayed, like Joseph. He emerges as a man severely betrayed. Yet he emerges as a leader to his own brothers, and ultimately he is the leader for the whole nation of Israel, essentially. Where are leaders coming from? From the bruised reeds, like Matthew. Matthew is a tax collector, but his other name, what is it? It's Matthew is called Levi. What does that tell you? He should have been a priest, but he's sold out to the Roman Empire, and he's collecting taxes, he's exploiting wealth from his own people for the sake of the Roman Empire, and then he's got a pyramid scheme with lesser tax collectors working for him, and he's just become this incredibly wealthy guy. You call him to be on your team of 12? Matthew's the only gospel writer who records these words from Isaiah. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smouldering wick he will not extinguish. You see, he was Levi. It was smouldering wick. And Jesus breathed gospel breath, and it came to life again. And Matthew follows Jesus, ends up writing a gospel. People, where are our future leaders coming from? Bruised reeds, the smouldering wicks. They're people who've got walkabout from who they really are, what they could be. Skillful leadership isn't looking for the finished product. It's part of God's redemption journey in equipping them to be what God wants them to be. Where are future leaders coming from? From those who are unbelievably passionate in the wrong direction. The misdirected, like Saul of Tarsus. Think about it. He's the number one enemy of the Christian church. Guys, I think we've lost the context here. It's the Osama bin Laden of the first century. I mean, he is dangerous. If he had that kind of weaponry, he would have blown up all the church communities. No. He's walking on a road. He set his direction to arrest Christians. And Jesus Christ of Nazareth meets him on the Damascus road and humbles him to the cross. His life is turned around, my friends. There are some people who are passionate about all kinds of things. The environment, even social justice. Be careful. I'm not social justice passionate about it. We've got to integrate proclamation and demonstration. We've got to do that. But the leaders of the church are coming from people who are possibly overly passionate in the wrong direction. We've got to bring them back to, hey, it's about following Jesus, taking your place in the new community of the people of God and leaders. Where are future leaders coming from? I'm glad you're asking me this question. From the raw clay of just young lives like Timothy. Timothy is your raw clay. The Common Ground Story, we've had this Year of Your Life program. We might have a break next year, but it's been a massive thing we've done over the years. And so many of our elders and church planters were original field teams. It's a remarkable story. And it's lovely to see. Kevin de Jong says, if you want to reach the next generation, if you want to see young leaders emerging, you've got to grab them with passion, win them with love, hold them with holiness, challenge them with truth, and amaze them with God.
Come on.
Got to find a way to put God in the face of this emerging younger generation. Where are our future leaders coming from? From the great marriages like Priscilla and Aquila, who just model this wonderful one flesh partnership and are such magnificent servants of the church. Where are our leaders coming from? From the sovereign connections or prophetic words. Ananias is in the church. The Lord says, we'll go down this street, turn left and go the street straight and da-da-da, and there you'll find, who was the guy? Cornelius. Sent messengers and to go and find Peter. Ananias is to go and find Paul and pray for him and get his sight back. God can sovereignly connect us circumstantially or with many assignments, and our lives collide. My brother-in-law Tony Johnson in India, he was leading a church in northern India, in Missouri, and he needed a leader, and a prayer meeting in South Africa. They were praying. He said, guys, I need a new leader. What are we going to do? In that environment, one of these guys, Fred Stone, plumber, says, hey guys, I've been praying. I don't know if the name Raman and Kiran means anything to you, but I just feel like I should share that. Tony's sort of smirking, giggling, thinking, oh, Raman, Kiran, nice try. What about Nadu and Moonsami? It's more Indian sounding. Gets back to Missouri and he shares this with the principal of an international school there and says, hey, I had this prophetic word, I don't know what to do with it. And the guy said to me, he said, no, but you know Raman and Kiran. He said, what do you mean? He says, no, I introduced them to you in Delhi. And one thing led to another. That couple eventually moved from Delhi. No, they never shared the word. Moved from Delhi to Missouri, joined the church, emerged as an elder, and then they handed the church over to Raman and Kiran from a plumber sharing this prophetic word. I'm not demeaning a plumber, I'm just saying it's not. He's not a full-time prophet or translocal gift. Just in a prayer meeting. God can sovereignly bring people through that kind of wisdom and divine engineering. Where are our future leaders coming from? We're landing, and then I'll look at this pipeline from those who put up their hands. Challenge people, ask for things. Guys, I'm looking for 3 men. I need strong guys. I need some guys to lead prayer meetings. Start asking people. Move toward them. Stop. Sometimes we're asking God so much we don't go to people and say, hey, this is the size of the vision. This is the task they need. So who can we count on? And there's nothing like doing that in front of a whole lot of really cool women if they're young guys around. Yeah, I'm your man. You know, just okay. I'm just being naughty. Where are leaders coming from? From the maturity cream that rises. Watch who's maturing. Do a maturity audit. Who's maturing in your community? And that's basically what Paul was saying to the early church in Jerusalem. Choose those 7 guys from among you, full of the Holy Spirit, full of wisdom, full of faith. There's a fullness in these. That's a maturity measure. Look for the guys who've got some fullness, and then appoint them. And so notice he didn't come and make it happen. He said, ask the local guys who have the witness. And so I regularly, when I meet with eldership teams and I meet with key leaders one-on-one, I say, so who's emerging in your story? What are you sensing? And blah, 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 blah. And it's lovely to see how some of you guys from the Common Ground story in the room. It's just lovely. Yeah. And then where our other last one, where our leaders coming from? From the from raiding the retirement mentality and syndrome. People who feel like, we just read about Caleb, 80 years old, good to go. Yeah. Beware of Alexander the Great syndrome. You know that story, Alexander the Great, after he had conquered all these lands, at age 30 he wept because there were no more lands to conquer. We won't have that problem, people. We won't have that problem. So why do we need a leadership culture and pipeline? Because everything happens by leadership. Why do we need to develop this for ourselves? Every local church, you can adapt from everywhere but adopt from nowhere. Adapt. We need to work hard at saying, what does our pipeline look like? Because like I said, different churches, footprint and soul print, those are different. And churches need to adapt a kind of a pipeline, and I'm going to share ours with you, and then you can use it. It'll be in the notes. Little quick interaction. What components of leadership development do we need to emphasize in our leadership pipeline? So what are we looking for? What bases do we need to cover as we train leaders? We want to go for, just say true or false. Heart. Thank you for that. Hugh just is so sharp. What usually you go? Okay, character. Gospel-centeredness. Contextualization. Gifting. Servanthood. Theology. Evangelism. Calling. Witness. Shepherd-heartedness. In training people, this is the vocabulary that needs to be in there somewhere. It's in the notes. And then I also want to say this, that if you're going to develop leadership in your church and a leadership pipeline in your church, you need to have one for in the church and from the church. It's not just about how do we get our Sunday show going. We've got to be training and equipping people for Sundays. And everyone's commissioned on a Sunday. So whether you work in the church or work in the marketplace, wherever you work, we commission people to go live out their faith in the world. We do not seal off our faith on a Sunday night from the world. We take our faith and we integrate faith, which is really fantastic. So what I'm going to share with you now, which is in the next 20 minutes or so, a helpful sort of example of a leadership pipeline. It was part of a 3 to 4 month journey. With our guys, we worked really, really hard, and we called it Big 5 leadership, as in the Big 5 of Kruger. So these are the big 5 things, 5 tracks. There's a bigger summary I did give to Dave in the past, but the one in the notes is a smaller summary. You just need to remind me if you want the bigger one, or you can email me and I'll send it to you. Preferably Dave, so that I don't have to email to everyone. Okay. So we've got these and we've put it out there, we make it available for guys in the church and from the church. The intro is that Christ wants to use you or us to make a salt and light impact on the world, both through the church and in the marketplace. And this document shows how we intend to do that. By impact, we mean our influence We mean what our lives touch, what our lives are designed to bless, what we're called to benefit, how we're called to change lives. And all of that comes under this heading of leadership, rooted in gentleness and humility and servanthood. So, let's go for it. Here are the big 5. Track 1, to increase influence or leadership, I need to lead myself better. Now, I know there are all kinds of talks on self-leadership, but this in the notes will be really, really helpful. So in a nutshell, if I want to lead others better, I need to lead myself better. So a good exercise is when you get up or go to the bathroom tonight, when you brush your teeth, this is the homework. Look in the mirror and ask this question to that reflection. Who's the most difficult person on planet Earth to lead? And if it's not what you're looking at, if you don't watch your lips say me, you are deluded. You are the most difficult person to lead. As a matter of fact, it's a helpful little axiom. If you were to kick the backside of the person who's caused you the most trouble in the last 5 years, you would not be able to sit down for 5 months. Because we have self-authored so much of our pain in the way we led ourselves. We like to blame others, we like to accuse others, but self-leadership is such a critical part, and what happens sometimes when we don't get self-leadership right, we're hard on everyone else and we're soft on ourselves. I'm not arguing for being hard on ourselves, I'm arguing for a biblical audit on ourselves, and the humility to recognize that we're still very much a work in progress, and that'll give us a grace eyes and grace lenses to view everyone else through. Comprehendo? Si, sino, is the answer. So to develop others, start with yourselves. Rick Warren says, years ago I stopped worrying about how to grow our church, and instead I focused on growing me. As I grew me, our church grew. So guys, we overinvest in the Sunday program, we underinvest in the devotional life and in sharpening our leadership skills. D. Hock says, it is the management of self that should occupy 50% of our time to the best of our ability. So how to lead yourself better? Don't be hijacked by strong negative emotions. If the devil can't get you to rob banks, he'll distort things for you emotionally. You'll just either feel you get too hard because you don't feel anything, or you overfeel and you get almost paralyzed by that. Daniel Goleman in Emotional Intelligence has analysed why some leaders develop their fullest potential and why most hit a plateau far from their full potential. Difference? Self-leadership. Guys who know how to lead themselves, keep going north. He calls it emotional self-control. Exceptional leaders distinguish themselves because of superior self-leadership. How to lead yourself better? Resist the temptations related to money, sex, and power, gold, girls, and glory, pounds, petticoats, and power. Except there are others. You see, before those things come into place, before we're tempted by that, that's why it's oversimplification. There's the great sin of discontent. A heart that is not ravished by the gospel is so up for being ravished by other counterfeit things. And you don't beat money, sex, and power by going and saying, I'm not going there, I'm not going there. You beat money, sex, and power by establishing a superior direction and trajectory for your heart and your life. You don't beat, if the worst place to go on holiday is Porfido, okay? The The worst place is poor photo.
It's actually not that bad.
If you're getting in your car and you're going to Plet, you don't in the car going to Plet say, we're not going to Pofada, we're not going to Pofada. Now the moment you said we're going to Plet, Pofada is off the radar. We've got to set the direction, the trajectory of our hearts and our lives, what matters. And those other things, their alluring, captivating power is broken in our lives. Sometimes it's easier to say no to the devil than it is to say yes to God. We've said yes to God and we start pursuing Him. It's like the devil is real. We need to be vigilant. We need to be aware of his schemes, but we're not camping there. Helpful?
Yeah.
And part of that thing of resisting the temptations to money, sex, and power is dealt with embracing the disciplines of self replenishment. Tiredness, overworking, when we're depleted, we're very vulnerable. So we need to be careful. Track number 2. To increase your impact, drum solo, follow others better. Have you noticed you haven't done any leading out there? You've got to get these 2 tracks in place, these 2 big ones. Lead yourself better and follow others better. So let me just do a quick little audit. Have you noticed, or just with me, let's audit, when Jesus was busy kickstarting this new community, what are the words He used to kickstart it with? Follow. Follow me. I will make you to become, Greek tense, fishers of men. So the Christian faith, the new community of the people of God begins with following. And Paul puts that on steroids when he says to other believing communities, follow me as I follow Christ. We are an army of followers. Michael Eaton once came to Common Ground and he said, but you guys are fascinated with leadership. Oh, it's my stockbroker. Wish. Sorry, that should have been off. He says, you guys, all you do is talk about leadership. It's a leadership there, the leadership there. The New Testament is not nearly as fascinated by leadership. Now, I think in terms of the numbers of times, it's implied in every church. It's implied in the forward movement of mission. But this thing of be the leader you were created to be, and we don't have those first 2 things of actually lead yourself better and follow others better. We don't front load with that. The ground is created for lots of ego-driven, sort of humanistic self-actualization kind of leadership, which is not what we're looking for, and the kingdom does not move forward on that stuff. Can I have a yeah?
Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
You're an unsanctified Pentecostal. But beyond no illusion, following is following someone somewhere. And in the context of following Christ or following other leaders, to be part of seeing a church plant happening, you can't be thinking of planting a church if you have not followed other leaders into something similar, got behind other leaders, served on another man's team, know what it's like to make somebody else look good. When you haven't lived in that sort of self-deprecating place where you haven't been thanked and your leadership isn't recognized, that's good. I've had all those moments where I've get up to preach at conferences and then my session was given to someone else. You know how good that is for you? Because it's not about you, not about me. The sovereign creator of the universe knows which sessions I need to preach, and I'm going to just say, good to go if you open that door. So, we all know Hebrews 13 and verse 7, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. I'm calling you to that in the churches that you're a part of. Follow those leaders. Affirm those leaders. Encourage those leaders. I'm not talking about sweet talk. I'm talking about kingdom lens. These guys, the things that those who are over you in the Lord, price they pay is and because we don't bleed all our challenges and struggles, don't assume that those leaders who are over you in the Lord are sitting on a throne, ex-cathedra or cathedra or whatever it is, with all this power. It's very, very hard. I nearly said blimming, but that wouldn't have been good for the recording. It's really hard work. Leading a team, taking ground, encouraging a team. On every team, there's some people who are flying, and there's some that are going through personal difficulties, and it's the hardest kind of leadership. Let me just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, leading in the church is the hardest kind of leadership on the planet. You say, what? Church, it's safe and hang on. No. When you're leading in the church, you're leading primarily volunteers. Primarily. Staff are just there to mobilize volunteers. Staff are not there to do the work in the main. And so when it comes to mobilizing volunteers, you can't incentivize volunteers with rewards because they've already got it. They've got heaven, they've got sonship. What else are you going to give them? They've got justification. What are you going to give them to incentivize them? And then you can't intimidate them with loss or punishment because they've been delivered from the wrath to come. Now it takes unbelievable leadership to get all of those volunteers, follow you into vision, then ask for their money at the same time. Where's there an organization on planet Earth that can do that with skill and respect and get people to love you for that? It's really hard, guys. I'm just humoring around that, but I mean it's tough. And of course, the answer to that is that we're not asking them primarily to follow us. Follow others well, because they're following, and we're following Jesus well. It's follow me as I follow Christ. There's only one, everything is directed. We're not making disciples of our church or our church plant. There's only one legitimate discipleship. We're making followers of Jesus. I know you believe this stuff, but I'm just saying it again because it's important. Why is followership the pathway to impact? Firstly, followership leads to impact because the average team of people requires more followers than leaders. Secondly, followership leads to impact because as we follow, we learn to lead. Thirdly, followership leads to impact because it makes us a conduit for an authority that's not our own. God starts to move through us in power in ways that is just, which is lovely. Fourthly, followership leads to impact because it gives us greater credibility when we do lead. We'll say, oh, so you're accountable. So, good followers are the wind in the sails of their leaders. Good followers play in team. Good followers invite feedback. I find it hard sometimes when you create a gap for somebody to minister, and it's way easier if we can coach people in advance. Oh, we have a culture here that seeks feedback. So, on Sunday, I preached here at Rondebosch. I went to Ryan, who was leading the meeting. And I said, Ryan, thanks, it was just a fantastic privilege to preach here. Is there anything I can do better in the second meeting? Now he's leading, it's his community. I'm not trading on past glories or roles or authority. I have to be open to say, well, maybe I wasn't that helpful in some of the things. And he said, we just go for it, it was perfect. Then he said, oh, there's just one thing. And then I said to him, I take authority over you, Satan, don't you dare.
Get going.
No, you don't. You listen, and because you're secure. Guys, when you've got sonship, you've got daughtership, you've got the high status in the universe, there's nothing to lose. So just relax, be open to feedback. Can't lose that, you got it. Number 3, track number 3. So number 1, lead yourself well. Number 2, follow others well. Number 3, embrace responsibility. Embrace responsibility. And not sure if I want to grow my leadership, I must embrace responsibility. Which means I need to take responsibility for some tasks or some assignments. And in the eldership context, you might be responsible for a sphere of ministry. When people are not on an eldership team, I love the concept of don't appoint people. Give them assignments. The beauty of an assignment is it has a beginning and has an end. And in that process, you can be doing all the order, especially in church planning phases. Don't rush. Your church can explode from, a small group, and suddenly you've got 50 people. Oh, I can't get to all these people. And the need for elders can make you rush that. No. Just give some assignments. Would you guys just be responsible for shepherding a group of people? I'll coach you on how to do that. We've got 4 home groups. We'd love you and your wife to lead this thing. And just at least for the next 6 months, then we can evaluate it afterwards. When you put a time frame in, it's got a beginning, it's got an end, and you've already settled the issue that I can take it back from you if it's not working out. And then you say, and then you coach people, this is what I expect in this thing. I want you to build people to the vision of the church. I want you to build people toward Jesus. Number 1, build toward Christ, build toward the vision, build toward our values, and if there's anything you're unsure of, just build toward me. As a leader, I'm happy to come and help explain. Now you've got all of that in place, the riverbanks, and then it's very easy at the end of that 3-month assignment or 6-month assignment to say, so how have we been doing? And hey, I can see some progress, this is fantastic. And our church has continued to grow. We're 50, suddenly we're 70. It's just been fantastic. Would you guys be prayerful about joining me for some deacon training? Now you're recognizing their fruitfulness, they've been tested in an area, come and do some deacon training. And then you train them, and then there's a moment to authorize them as small group leaders, put some deaconing authority on them and let them live. But they'll be building toward Jesus, building toward the vision of the church, building toward the Bible, building toward community, and where needed, building toward the leaders for if they need explanation and stronger leadership. They won't see themselves as the last resort when there's a crisis. They keep reaching beyond themselves. That's community, that's health. I feel like planting a church. Hey, guys?
5 more there, friends.
I like about you. I'll tell you when I found something. Moving on. That's what you call leading with a chin. Hit me one more time. Okay, come on boys, girls, let's focus on this. We need to not just make people responsible for tasks, make them responsible for people. Guys, our most significant wealth are the lives that have been entrusted to our care. So be very careful to put people over tasks. It's one thing to put them over people, but be very, very careful. By taking responsibility, we also have to embrace accountability, and we've got to hold people. Now, there's 2 kinds of accountability. I teach this when we do deacons and leadership training. I said there's the accountability that I can require of you because I'm a leader over you in the Lord. So I can ask you to give an account. Or there's the accountability that you choose to give because of your servant heart and you don't want me second guessing and you want to make my life a joy. Which one do you think will work best to create a flourishing community? Now I will call people to account, but the culture you want is people who are giving an account. Isn't that lovely? Okay. I think it's lovely. You don't have to agree with me. And of course, in the way responsibility increases, as we ordered, we can say faithful over a little, ruler over much. Increase the sphere, increase the level of responsibility in proportion to increased humility, Christ-likeness and character, and fruitfulness in what they've done, and we can move people along. There are 5 benefits for embracing responsibility according to Jesus. Embracing responsibility will grow your character. Look what Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant. When you've done the job, there's something that's happening in you. There's the development of your character. Embracing responsibility practices your servant-heartedness. Well done, good and faithful servant. It also shows your faithfulness. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. We've got to relaunch those words, faithfulness and faithful. A lot of guys want to just talk about faith, but the best forms of faith are rooted in God's faithfulness and our own faithfulness in the way we live it out. Embracing responsibility grows our capacity. You've been faithful with a few things, I will put you in charge of many things. And then finally, embracing responsibility leads to joy. The Master said, come and share in the Master's happiness. And these are beautiful, beautiful things. I mean, this is a great leadership. When you're asking, calling people to them, share this stuff. It's in the notes. You can just use it. Don't even mention Common Ground. But you'll have to develop your own. You've got to make this yours somehow, or a version of a leadership pipeline. Track 4 is increased impact. You increase your impact when you're getting equipped. In a nutshell, if I want to grow my leadership, I must sharpen my competencies. One of the striking things about Jesus is just how competent he was in knowledge, communication, organization, relational dynamics, and leadership. Where did he get it from? First, he drew on the resources of the Holy Spirit. And Jesus, led by the Spirit. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon him. Paul says, not that we are competent in ourselves to claim anything for ourselves, but our competence comes from God. He has made us competent as ministers of the... This is competency. We have this way of spiritualizing all of this. We can become better ministers of the gospel. We can become better communicators of the truth. We can become better preachers. We can become better by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit. Not of the letter, but for the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. The second way Jesus grew his competency was through sharpening and developing himself. And the great verse that's been like a life verse for me is that Luke 2:52. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with both God and man. So the progress and the maturity, if the Son of God had to go through that trajectory, I'm pretty encouraged. I'm happy to say, Lord, I'm a work in progress. Please, let me keep going forward, not backwards. Oh, I need your grace. But Jesus grew in stature, that's physical growth, and in wisdom, that's intellectual growth, and in favor with both God and man. It was observable on the horizontal and on the vertical. True maturity isn't just what I am before men. True maturity is what we truly are for God. 6 natural ways to sharpen your competencies. Select and learn from role models and leading practitioners. Watch and read and listen to equipping resources. Attend live equipping events and courses. Find a coach in an area, somebody you can have regular conversation with. Get 360-degree feedback. We do that in our Common Ground thing with all our elders. We do 360 degrees. That's your peers are involved, your team leaders involved, and it's life-giving. It really is a fantastic, affirming thing. But when you know you're going to get a review, that in itself is a form of accountability to say, well, gee, I better lead myself well because I know others are going to call me down the road. So it's important. Develop people skills. Oh my dear. Can I tell you the number one thing where people mess up in leadership? It's not the 3 Ps. It's not the 3: money, sex, and power. It's not. Church leaders primarily mess up in the way they do interpersonal relationships. Terrible. Some of the stuff I've seen going, some of the stuff I've witnessed in the last 18 months in church, I cannot believe it. Honestly, the most highly gifted people just pressing regularly self-destruct buttons in the way they've hurt people around them. Just absolutely grieves me to see that. Every person we're dealing with is an image bearer, if they've not come to Christ yet, or is a son or a daughter if they have. There are no grounds for disrespect. There are no grounds for not bringing affection and dignifying every moment with appropriate respect and love. Our country, tragedy of South Africa, is that we brought those guarantees selectively. Now we've got to work really, really hard at building quality relationships across all the divides. But we can do it if we are saying, hey, I've got some growing to do. I need to get equipped a bit better. Who can I work with? Who can coach me in this? Let's have those crucial conversations. Last point, and then we're going to take a few questions. Track 5. To increase impact, raise others up. When you go to a leadership pipeline, if it begins and ends with you, you're in serious trouble. Have you ever chuckled when you've read the account of Jethro coming to Moses? I mean, it's just hilarious. Jethro the Midianite, his father-in-law. Now, I'm trying to imagine what would have been going on that he approached Moses. So Moses is working from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, trying to settle all the disputes. He's like this pastor who's burning the candle at both ends, which probably means he's getting home very late. And my imagination just suggests a few things. That maybe she's waiting up for him and just keeps falling asleep. So she complains to her pagan, unregenerate dad. Says, it's just really not good. Now, the next day, there's an email in his inbox, and Moses reads it, and it's Jethro saying, can I just book some time with you? I want to have a conversation. I want to know what's going down. So they schedule a time, they meet at Mug and Bean. And Jethro says, look, I'm going to come straight to the point. What you're doing is not good. I mean, just see Moses, the mighty man on the mountain, tablets. Unbelievable signs, wonders, Egyptians. Jethro says, what you're doing is not good. It's unbelievable. Now, he might have softened to Yahweh. There's no evidence of this guy having had great, spiritual maturity, but he just had common sense that the mighty anointed man of God couldn't see. And the answer to that issue in his life was appointing captains of tens, 50s, hundreds of thousands. It actually became the model for the cell church thing that Ralph Neighbor came up with, and they said, Jethro. And guys, just for what it's worth, I think Strength Finder is this is pagan natural. It's not pagan and that it's unbiblical. It's actually a beautiful principle. If you want to lead a growing community, raise others up. Don't try and do it all yourself. Now, what kind of doof did Moses not get? It's there. It's in the Bible. It's an example for us. Which means we also might need to listen to some of the voices in secular society from time to time. They're not the authority, but they can inform some of our conversation on how to upskill. And we need a revolution in the area of reproducing leaders. Where our future leaders come from is very helpful, but now how do we shape all of those guys? We need to, in a nutshell, if I want to grow my leadership, I must empower others to do what I now do. I've got to multiply myself. Good volunteer is someone who gets the job done. A great volunteer is someone who draws others in and equips them to get the job done. A good leader leads some people well. A great leader draws others in and equips them also to lead like Jesus. Look at the words of Jesus. And then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers to the harvest field. And then the next minute, Jesus calls the 12 and sends them out. He's reproducing himself in these others, and that's what we call multiplying leaders. There's one thing better than being a great leader, my friends. You want to sleep well? You want to really enjoy doing ministry? There's one thing better than being a great leader. It's being a great leader maker. Invest in others. Take a risk. I'm not talking about appointments, assignments. And I think on that note, I'm probably time up. I've got a little bit of time. So that's just a window into those 5 what I think are core ingredients to create a leadership pipeline. There can probably be some others you can come up with. This is not in the New Testament. It's our best approach. After 3 to 4 months, a team of leaders grappling with, he said, okay, the big 5. Lead yourself well, lead others well, take responsibility, get equipped, and raise others up. And that's at least can kickstart you to thinking about a leadership pipeline. Dave, you've got the fuller notes on the big 5.
I'll send out to everybody.
Because the one I've got in my notes is a miniature version, but I'd love them to get the bigger version as well.
Yeah.
Just a disclaimer, it is not the only way to do so. We're giving you because it came out of such research and we had the size to be able to distill. We looked at so many models on creating a leadership pipeline. We came up with the big 5, which I think can work in big churches and small churches. Lord, thank you for these men and our dear lady, and thank you that we get to do this together, to learn at your feet. And give me wisdom to answer any questions. Amen.